Hi everybody, now we're actually at chapter number 4, which is actually the internal assessment itself. Now I would like to commence the importance of internal assessments itself by conducting internal audits. Now this is a very crucial audit because it determines your weaknesses and your strengths for your specific organisation. Now, in relation, when you're conducting your audits, it's crucial for you to understand that each department will have its own audit. As an example, you have your HR department, you have your financial department, you have your operation department, you have your management department. So each department will have its own audit and its own analysis, and then you'll be able to determine the weaknesses and the strength of that specific department. Slide number 5 is actually the purpose of internal audits. Now, the internal strength and weaknesses coupled with actually the opportunities and threats provide actually a very clear vision and mission for the organisation itself. Now, by obtaining those data, you'll be able to make a very clear company's objectives, and then from there you'll be able to conduct your own strategies. Obviously, the strategy will be designed to improve on firm's weaknesses, and it will turn those weaknesses into strength. That's the whole purpose of this, that you are fully aware of the weaknesses itself, and therefore you're going to turn that weakness into a strength. Now, a very important point I would like to outline here, the major advantages in conducting internal audits, it would actually provide organisations with what we call a competitive advantage, which we did refer back to in chapter number 2. Now, what is, again, just a brief and a recap of what is competitive advantage. A competitive advantage is actually a value that an organisation creates for its customers via its strengths. So as an example, we gave that before, that providing a better customer service by delivering your goods quicker, okay, and better than your competitors. That's an example. Now, having a weakness and acknowledging that weakness and turning that weakness into a strength, okay, is basically leading to a competitive advantage, because that weakness itself could be your strength, and that weakness is also your competitor's weakness, and that becomes also your competitive advantage. So do not underestimate your weaknesses. In relation to the tools that we actually utilize for your internal assessments are customer analysis, selling products and services analysis, product and service planning, your pricing, distribution, market research, and opportunity analysis itself. Now, to conduct that, we actually use a couple of methods. We actually use communication, such as your surveys, checklists, interviews, and hard data that we can actually obtain. Managers and employees perform better when they actually do understand what affects them, okay? So it's crucial, by understanding the obstacles, you can actually overcome those. Performing an internal audit, thus, is an excellent method for improving the process of communication organisation and giving a better direction. And that is really the main purpose. Now, by conducting internal audits, we actually have what we call a process in internal assessment itself. And you'll see the process itself initially starts with planning, then it goes to organising, motivating, it goes to your staffing, which is your employees, your stakeholders, and then it goes to the final 5th stage, which is actually controlling, okay? Controlling and evaluating. Now let's go through that first one, which is planning. Now, planning obviously gets done by the management department. And what they actually do, they actually forecast, okay, what we're going to do as a strategy, we're going to work on what objectives, etc., etc. And part of that planning, you actually might have developed policies or set certain goals for your organization. And that could be also based on the weaknesses and the strength that you've actually developed or that you actually determined. Now, in relation to the second part, which is organizing, is basically you're actually organizing the design, how you're going to have that implemented in a way of resources, of being job specialization, job description, job specification, job design, and job analysis. So you're really organizing how you're going to implement that. Now, the third one is actually motivating, and that's actually motivating your stakeholders, your employees. And that's very important because you may have a great strategy in place, but your employees are not motivated. They don't agree with that strategy that you came up with. Now, it's very important to ensure that you liaise and brainstorm with employees and having that cooperation with your stakeholders. So providing strong leadership and communication skills, now providing even job satisfaction, a better working culture, that all could be part of motivation. Now, very important also with this motivation technique is that some people or employees are actually not motivated is because they don't really understand actually the objectives. They don't understand what your goal, what you want to achieve. They get bombarded from a sense that they just get tasks, they get what they're going to do, but they don't really understand. But for you as a leader, especially for the management part of it, get them involved in the strategy and ensuring that they can actually be involved from the start. It gives them that high motivation factor. Now, the next one is actually management, which is actually with staffing itself now. So now it goes hand in hand because with staffing itself, yes, you do have to motivate your staff, but it's also having the right staff because some of your employees might be not competent in that particular department. So staffing or selecting the right staff for that department is crucial. Okay, so you might have to rehire or fire. You might have to have employees' benefits, increase salaries or decrease salaries. Maybe have work on your labour relationship, career developments, training. These are all crucial part of staffing itself. And that's also part of internal assessments is because when you actually conduct that to your staffing, you might have a certain group from a certain department that are lacking certain skills, which is affecting their performances. So that internal assessments outlines and rings a bell that, hold on, we have weaknesses in this department and therefore you may implement training or you might have to rehire, as an example. Now, and the fifth function talks about controlling. So what are we controlling here? So we're controlling the quality of the service, the quality of the product, the financial control. Are we meeting financials as per monthly budgets or yearly budgets? The expense control. How much are we spending? Rewards and sanctions. So these are all part of controlling itself. Now, part of controlling is that you gotta really have a close monitor. And the best way to do that is basically, I would highly recommend you what we have is your budgets, what you're allowed for, and then you have your actual, and you're always comparing. Now, a lot of managers tend to do this once every 6 months or usually end of the year, where I would actually highly recommend you doing this at least once a month. Because if there is a gap or there is a concern, what you can actually do is actually fix that weaknesses immediately and work on that gap, okay? Rather than noticing that right at the end and it's a bit hard to fix end of the year. So the internal assessment for the marketing department has 7 sections. So when you're actually conducting your internal assessments now, we're going to focus on each department. Now, we're going to focus on the first one, which is marketing, okay? Now, on slide number 14, you'll see that focus on customer analysis, okay? How is these customers responding? Are they happy? They're not happy? Are they purchasing? Are they not purchasing? Which channel are they actually getting our products from, or they're buying from? So this is all part of marketing. Okay, product and service planning, the pricing. The pricing is another major factor. Is the pricing right? From our surveys, is the client satisfied with the pricing? Is it too high? Is it too low? That's very also a crucial part of the internal assessments for marketing. Marketing research is very, very important, because part of your market research, you might go through a new market segmentation. What you have at the moment is not enough, or they've decreased the purchase. So you might go through a new market, a new area, a new state, or a new country. So that's something that you need to confirm, which relates to also opportunity. So your marketing, the way that we actually conduct that is actually obviously through customer surveys, customer information of what they've purchased from us, what they've returned from us, as an example. Marketing positioning strategies, okay? How are we going to position ourselves? How strong is our brand, as an example? How are we actually, are we advertising in the right channels? Are we getting a lot more orders through social media in comparison to newspapers, as an example? And which segmentation are we going to be targeting? So that's also goes through all customer analysis. Part of also marketing is your sales product services, which talks about, because you're selling this product and service, which advertisements you're using, what's the sales like, the promotion, the customer relations, and also the dealer relations, because our dealers, if our relationship with the dealers is bad, we might not be able to get our goods from them, okay? And therefore might delay our product to the customers. So as it's a two-way situation, we have to have a good relationship with our customers and also a good relationship with our dealers as well. Now, in relation to product and service planning, it's very important to making sure that you test the market, making sure that you have your brand positioning in the right place, product style, the quality, and again, all these cuts done by the feedback from our customers, either through surveys or information from what they've purchased. Because you might have a certain product that you've been selling quite well last year, but this year is not selling well. Okay, so this is really important. You got to determine why is that the case. Now, pricing is important. When's the best time to actually provide a discount? Is there a certain particular month or months that you might actually have to provide discounts? What about maybe providing credit terms, paying in installments? Is your markup right? Are you too cheap or too expensive? The unit pricing itself. So by determining internal analysis, if the product itself, for example, it costs you $2 to make and you sell it for, say, $3, okay, so you're making extra $1. Is that what's the going rate? Is that what your competitors actually doing? Are you cheaper than your competitors? Or is there more room for you to go down to provide that competitive advantage? Distribution, which relates to, do you need to have a warehouse to put all your goods? Which channels that you need to supply to? What coverage? Which territories that you need to supply to? Transportations. And these are all considerations that you need to be aware part of your internal assessments itself. And these will all affect the marketing department. And then the marketing department also relates to your marketing research, which is the data collected of what these customers, of these trends or change of trends, you need to be aware of, and that the marketing team would be able to tell you that. The data input, the data analysis. So this is all part of the research for the marketing department itself. Now, in relation to opportunity analysis from the marketing department, now this is really important because you need to assess the risks, okay? So for example, you might be spending too much on television and newspapers that it's not bringing you the returns as expected. So that is a risk because there's a loss. You might take that funding and put it somewhere else. Assessing the benefits and how you can actually increase the benefits. So there's certain segmentation that you're getting very high benefits. You may actually have an extra focus on that. You might just determine why you have a really major success from that particular segmentation, and see you can find a similar segmentation in another area or another country. The next section or the department that you need to conduct your internal assessment is actually your financials. And the financial department is very important because it focuses on the money wise. And if there's not enough funds for the company itself, it may lead the organization to liquidation. So you're actually able to determine the profit and loss ratio. Is actually a profit getting achieved as per objectives? You might determine that every quarter or monthly or every 6 months, but I wouldn't really recommend doing it just once a year. So keep a regular, updates on that. So you go through your gross profit margins, operating profit margins, your net profit margins, the return on total assets, the return on investments. So all these comes back to your financials. The expenses itself, is it meeting expenses, or is it, there's expenses always regularly more than what it's actually what comparison to the budget itself. And then you have your growth ratios. So the growth ratios is the net income, that's what you need to be aware of. Sales, earnings per share, and so on. So these all are an important part of your financials. Now, part of financials is that also making sure that you're comparing that to actually the budgets, what you had initially, comparing to the actual budget to actual, and seeing the gap, and seeing obviously your weaknesses, and if it's matching or even doing better, that's your strength. Okay, so your strength could be saving a substantial amount of money from your operation department. So that'll be your part of your strength from that process. Then we're actually going to assess our production and operation department. So we're going to assess the process, we're going to assess the capacity, we're going to assess the workforce and the quality from the operation and production team. So the process itself, okay, we're going to assess the design, we're going to assess the choice of technology, facility, the process flow itself. Is this efficient, or has to be re-engineered? And that's something, again, by determining the statistics, speaking to the foremen and managers on the floor, and determining how that process is actually is working. And so the production operation is a really important process to assess, because it could be an enormous amount of weaknesses that can be improved. And usually, working with a lot of organisation, there's a lot of enormous amount of improvement gets actually conducted through the production and operation section. Now, in relation to the capacity, it's very important to forecast. Are we, forecasting correctly? Are we meeting deadlines? Are we producing the amount of products as we expected? So these all are part of our capacity. And again, comparing our budget or our estimates initially, comparison to our actual, and then you can determine, is there weaknesses or is there a strength? And if there's a strength, great. If there's a weaknesses, let's work on that. Then we go through our next item, which is inventory, which talks about your raw materials, work in progress, the finished goods, materials handling. Now, how can we determine if there's gaps or there's weaknesses or strength on that? Again, we can go through the process itself. We can see the data of the products and the finishing goods. Are we getting a lot of the products returned by our customers, as an example? That's possible. Okay. Then also part of the production operation is the workforce. Okay. Obviously, you have a lot of employees on the floor conducting these labor force. So you're going to making sure are they working to standards? Are they actually conducting and meeting the policies as the quality standards? Are these actually are they motivated? Are they meeting the health standards, and so on and so on? So these are all part of the workforce itself, and it will lead to our quality, which is the last one, which deals with actually our quality control. Is that product meets our quality standards? It may actually go to our country standards, such as Australian standards, an example. You might go through sampling or testing, quality assurance, and even cost control. But quality control of products is very, very important, and quality control of customer service is very, very important, which can be again conducted either by listening to your employees or even getting feedback from your customers. Now, questions to consider for the production and operation department. Now, very important here is that our supplies of raw materials, parts, are reliable. Now, sometimes, especially coming from operation and production, one of the major weaknesses is that the machines itself have not been maintained, or the machines itself have not been updated. They've been 5-10 years old, and may cause a lot of issues in relation to reduction of production itself, causing products to be faulty, and so on. So, and part of that is actually our quality control policies and procedures effective, and employees, these people actually in the workforce on the ground level, are they following that? Have they actually read it? Have they seen it? It's surprisingly that working with some organisation, that when you talk about policies and procedures to the workforce who's actually in the operation department, they have not heard of, they have not seen it. So it's crucial that they get educated and understand these policies and procedures, and they need to follow it. The next department is actually R&D, which is the Research and Development Department. And this is a very important department because this department will determine what is the coming trend. What is going to be what's the new segmentation that we might have to go to? Are we able to expand globally? Do we have to reduce our operation? And there needs to be enough funding for the R&D from the organisation itself to conduct their own research. And this is a very important point in relation to R&D, that they need to have the flexibility and the funding to conduct research, not to be biased, and making sure that the research is actually accurate. Obtaining that information, and from that information we can assess what's our weaknesses. Can we actually implement AI in the next year or two? Can we implement better machinery that's coming out? And so on and so on. And that all gets assessed from the R&D. Okay? So do not underestimate research and development, and allowing a budget for that. So research and development, obviously the next slide, which is slide number 33, is a budget needs to be allowed for that to conduct their own research, and it also needs to determine our competitors' strategies, what they're doing differently. Is someone of our competitors actually utilising a new strategy that we're aware of? And what's the complication of that strategy? What is the cost factor for us implementing that strategy in our own organisation itself, or implementing a brand new strategy as an example. So by implementing that, the R&D will provide you the benefits, the advantage and the disadvantage, and in addition to that, actually the cost factor for the organization itself. But that all takes time and money. Now we go into our next section, which is the internal factor evaluation matrix, which is the IFA matrix. Now, the internal factor evaluation matrix is important because it's a strategy formulation tool that summarizes and evaluates the major strengths and weaknesses in the function areas of a business itself. So this is a basic matrix that we actually conduct in each department to determine what is our major weaknesses and strength, again, without being biased. Now, if you have a look here on slide number 35, and this is a very important table, and I would like you please to have a look at this, it outlines the first 9 strengths, and then below that you actually got your 8 weaknesses. Now, the first column itself, okay, is basically, again, same with other matrices and must sum up to 1. It cannot be more than 1. Now, having the higher value, it means actually it is important. Now, you got also the rating next to that, which is basically you got your 3 and 4s, and then your weaknesses is 2 and 1. And again, we actually spoke about that before, is that your major weaknesses will be a 1, your minor weaknesses is a 2, okay? So remember, so 1, when you're actually going through the assessment itself, that is a crucial because it's a major weaknesses that we need to improve on. Then with your major strength, that's a 4, that's an advantage. We can use that part of our competitive advantage. And your minor strength is a 3. So if you go back to that table, again on slide number 35, you'll be able to see from our strength itself, you've got a 4, item number 2. Okay, so average customer purchase increased from 97 to 127, okay, from 97 to 128, my apologies. And then you also got item number 7, which is they're also given a rating of 4, which basically relates to in-store technical support personnel. So we're saying that basically one of our main competitive advantage is that our staff in stores have a very strong technical knowledge, okay, and customers obviously are satisfied from that factor, okay. Now, weaknesses, on the other hand, if you look at the ones, which is a major concern, if you look at the ones item number 3, carpet and paint in stores are somewhat not pleasant, okay? And then you got the next item here, item number 4, bathroom in store needs obviously to be renovated. And item number 7, suppliers on time delivery increased to 2.4, which is because of delay, okay? 2.4, which is not accepted. So you're getting some customers complaining there's actually obviously delay in the delivery. And then item number 8, which is part of our weaknesses, talks about that often customers have to wait to check out, okay? So again, creating that lack of good customer service, which is not really good at all. Now you can see the third column, when you multiply the first by the second, which is the same as our other matrices, we get a 2.5. Now, again, 2.5 is an average, unfortunately. So this company here is doing quite as an average, and there's obviously room for improvement. So this is what it's talking about. Again, the maximum, okay, is actually a 4. Anything below that is not good at all, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, if you go to our slide number 41, you've got actually an example of IFE, which is provided in table 4.1. This is for a retail computer store, okay? Now, I would like you to please have a look at that one. This is basically, again, the example that we're going through, and this is the weighted score itself is 2.5, which is actually the average. Now, whenever you're actually conducting the IFE, remember when you put in the weight itself, don't just put a number or don't just guesstimate and go, you know what, I think this will be a 0.5. Um, just have a think about it and actually liaise and communicate with your colleagues in determining what weight you consider putting, especially also with the rating itself. The rating itself is crucial and it plays a big role. And by you putting a 4 or a 3 part of your strength, you got to also making sure that you have 2 or 3 people that you can actually brainstorm with to making sure that you have an accurate figure in there by liaising that. And again, these figures will not just be communicated with colleagues, but you will actually be able to obtain data or information or surveys from your own organisation and determining, well, hold on, actually we had, X amount of customers not satisfied with this, that is a major concern. We're going to put a 3 here for our strength. However, we've got a great technical support in our stores. We're going to put a 4. So, if you have data, use that, analyze it, and with addition to that, communicate with your work colleagues to making sure that you got the right rating. Because if you put a 3, which is supposed to be a 4, that is an issue. Okay. Same thing with the weaknesses. If you put a 1 and not a 2, or if you put a 2 instead of a 1, again that creates the data stuff that you're going to get as your weighted score in the end might not reflect a true figure. So my recommendation: get your data, analyze it, speak to your colleagues, and then making sure that you put the figures and making sure that your colleagues also agree to it. And then you have what we call a weighted score that you can actually then take action from there. And that we actually completed chapter number 4. Thank you very much, and we'll continue with chapter 5 next time.